Listen to me. You are flying down the interstate, doing a clean 60 miles per hour. The sun is hitting your windshield. You are minding your own business in this brutal 2026 economy where a tank of gas costs as much as a steak dinner used to, and then it happens. A deep, low, rhythmic humming starts bleeding into the cabin. Wub-wub-wub-wub-wub. It is not the radio, it is not the road. It is coming from somewhere deep inside the guts of your car, and it sounds exactly like the rotor blades of a low-flying military helicopter hovering right above your headliner. You feel it in the floorboards. You feel it in the steering wheel. You feel it in your chest. The vibration is so intense, so mechanical, so terrifyingly rhythmic that your brain immediately goes to the worst possible place. You think, this is it. The transmission is eating itself. The differential is grinding to metal shavings. I am about to lose the entire drivetrain on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere with a $2,000 tow bill waiting for me. You white-knuckle the steering wheel, you ease off the gas, and you limp that car into the nearest dealership service bay, because what other choice do you have? And the man in the clean polo shirt behind the counter, the one who has never turned a wrench in his life, he writes up your symptoms. He disappears into the back for 20 minutes, and he comes back with a clipboard and a face full of fake sympathy, and he tells you the magic words. The internal planetary gears inside your transmission case are spalling. The main pinion bearing in your rear differential is shedding metal. We are going to have to pull the entire transmission assembly, possibly the rear end as well, and the total estimate, with parts, labor, fluids, and shop fees, is going to come out to right around $3,000. Maybe $3,200, maybe $3,500 if they find anything else when they crack it open. $3,000 in 2026 money. That is somebody's rent. That is somebody's groceries for 4 months. That is a person's entire emergency fund vaporized in a single phone call because their car made a humming noise. And here's what I need you to understand, because this is the part that makes my blood boil. This is the part I have been screaming about for years, and the corporate dealership lobby keeps trying to bury it. That diagnosis is almost always a complete and total fabrication. Your transmission is fine, your differential is fine. Those heavy-duty Japanese-engineered gears, especially if you are driving a Toyota, a Honda, a Subaru, a Mazda, a Nissan, those things are swimming in clean automatic transmission fluid, and they are built to outlast the human civilization that designed them. The real villain, the actual culprit creating that helicopter noise, is a $40 part bolted behind one of your 4 wheels, a wheel bearing. A simple, dumb, sealed steel hub assembly that you can buy off the shelf at any parts counter in America for between $35 and $60 depending on the make and model. The dealerships making billions off your highway panic want you to think a humming car means catastrophic transmission failure. It almost never is. It's basic acoustic resonance and load dynamics, the same physics that have been understood since the 1800s. But as always, I am sharing this old-school diagnostic driving secret strictly for educational purposes, because I want you to be an informed consumer who can ask the right questions and not get steamrolled by a service writer with a sales quota. Let me walk you through the engineering, because if you do not understand the science, you will not believe me and you will let them take your $3,000. The chassis of your car, the frame, the unibody, that entire structural skeleton, it is made of welded steel, solid, rigid, continuous steel. And steel is one of the best conductors of mechanical vibration on the planet. When you tap a steel bar on one end, the sound wave travels through the entire length of that bar almost instantly. This is not opinion, this is metallurgy. This is the same reason train workers in the 1800s used to put their ear to the rail to hear a locomotive coming from 10 miles away. The vibration travels through the steel faster and louder than it travels through the air. Now your car is essentially one giant, complicated steel tuning fork on 4 rubber wheels. When a wheel bearing on the front passenger side starts to fail, when those tiny, precision-machined steel ball bearings inside the sealed hub lose their lubricating grease and start grinding against the inner and outer races, they create a low-frequency mechanical vibration. And that vibration does not stay at the wheel. It travels. It telegraphs. It moves through the steering knuckle, into the control arm, into the subframe, into the floor pan, and it amplifies inside the cabin of the car like a guitar body amplifying the vibration of a string. By the time that sound wave reaches your ears, sitting in the driver's seat, your brain cannot tell where it originated. Your ears are telling you the sound is coming from underneath you, from the middle, from right around where the transmission tunnel is. So you assume it is the transmission. Of course you do. Your brain is doing pattern matching based on geography. But the geography is a lie, because the sound did not come from there. It traveled there through the steel chassis like a whispered message running down a string between two tin cans. This is called acoustic telegraphing, and it is the single most exploited diagnostic illusion in the entire Western auto service industry. Master Japanese mechanics have known about this for 40 years. They build their cars with this in mind. They isolate components, they use specific rubber bushings, they engineer the suspension geometry to minimize the harmonics. But they cannot stop a worn-out bearing from singing through the frame, because steel is steel and physics is physics. If you are tired of mechanics trying to sell you a completely new transmission because of a noisy wheel, hit the like button right now and help this video punch through the algorithm. Because the search engines do not want educational content like this getting in front of regular working people. And tell me in the comments if your car currently sounds like a helicopter on the highway and what a dealership quoted you, because I read every single one of these and I want to see how bad the extortion has gotten across the country in 2026. Subscribe and hit the bell before the transmission rebuilding lobby and the parts manufacturers get this channel demonetized because they have already tried twice this year. Now let me explain to you exactly how the Stealerships scam runs, line by line on the invoice, because once you see the mechanics of the theft, you cannot unsee it. When you walk into that service bay describing a humming noise at highway speed, the service writer immediately codes your ticket as a drivetrain diagnostic. That alone is a flat fee, usually between $150 and $300 in 2026, just for the privilege of them looking at the car. Then, the technician puts the car on the lift, spins the wheels by hand, listens for 30 seconds, and writes down whatever generates the highest labor estimate. A transmission removal and replacement is the holy grail for a service department because the book time on a full transmission R&R, remove and replace, is anywhere between 12 and 18 hours of labor. At a current dealer shop rate of around $180 to $220 per hour in most American metro areas in 2026, that is between $2,000 and $4,000 in labor alone. Then they add the cost of a rebuilt transmission unit, fluids, a new torque converter, because they always say you have to do the converter at the same time, a new flex plate, gaskets, seals, shop supplies, environmental disposal fees, and a little line item at the bottom called miscellaneous that nobody ever questions. That is how you get from a humming noise to a $3,200 bill in about 45 minutes of fake diagnostic work. Now compare that to the actual repair you need. A wheel bearing hub assembly for the vast majority of Japanese vehicles costs between $40 and $80 from a parts counter. The labor to swap it is about 1 hour, maybe 90 minutes, if it is rusted on. A fair independent shop will charge you between $200 and $350 total, parts and labor, to fix the actual problem. That is a 90% discount on the same noise, the same car, the same drive home. The dealership knows this. The technician on the floor knows this. The service writer absolutely knows this. They are betting on your fear of breaking down on the highway, and they are weaponizing your ignorance of basic acoustic physics. That is the business model. It is not a mistake. It is not a miscommunication. It is a deliberate, repeatable, mathematical extraction of wealth from working people who do not know any better. Now let me get into the actual mechanical science of why a $40 bearing makes a sound that mimics a $5,000 component, because this is where it gets really beautiful and really damning. A wheel bearing is a sealed metal canister that contains an inner race, an outer race, and somewhere between 8 and 12 precision ground steel ball bearings sitting in a cage, all packed with high temperature grease. When the bearing is healthy, those balls roll smoothly between the two races. The grease keeps everything lubricated, and you hear nothing. Silence. But over time, water gets past the seal, heat cycles cause the grease to break down, tiny particles of metal start to flake off, and eventually, microscopic pits form on the surface of 1 or 2 of those steel balls. We are talking about pits the size of a grain of sand, submicroscopic damage. But here is the physics of it. At 60 miles per hour, the typical passenger car wheel is rotating at approximately 800 revolutions per minute. The ball bearings inside the hub are spinning at an even higher relative speed because of the gear ratio between the inner and outer race, somewhere around 2,000 to 2,400 contact events per minute. Every single time a pitted ball passes a load point inside the race, it creates a tiny shockwave. Multiply that by 2,400 events per minute, and you get a vibration frequency of around 40 hertz. 40 cycles per second. And what does the human ear interpret a 40 hertz mechanical vibration as? A deep, low, pulsating hum, exactly the frequency of a helicopter rotor. Exactly the wub-wub-wub-wub you hear in your cabin. The sound is not random, it is not vague. It is a mathematically predictable consequence of a damaged steel sphere making contact with a damaged steel race at a specific rotational velocity. And it gets louder with speed because faster rotation means more contact events per second, which means higher amplitude and higher frequency of the wub. That is why the noise barely exists at 20 miles per hour, becomes noticeable at 40, and feels like a Black Hawk landing on your roof at 65. The Japanese engineers know this so well that they designed their bearings with double-row angular contact geometry and metal-impregnated rubber seals to delay this failure mode as long as physically possible, which is why a Toyota wheel bearing routinely lasts 150,000 miles, while certain European luxury cars are eating bearings every 40,000. That is not an accident. That is design philosophy. Now I am going to teach you the single most important diagnostic test you will ever learn as a car owner, and it costs you $0 and takes about 90 seconds to perform. It is called the Swerve Test, and master mechanics have been using it quietly for 50 years. Here is how it works. You find an empty stretch of road. I want to be extremely clear about this part. Empty. No traffic in front of you. No traffic behind you. No cars in the next lane over. A wide, vacant rural road or a deserted industrial area on a Sunday morning. This is non-negotiable for your safety. You bring the car up to about 50 miles per hour, just enough to hear the humming noise clearly. Then, with both hands firmly on the wheel, you very gently, very smoothly, shift the steering wheel a tiny amount to the left, just enough to feel the car drift slightly. You are not making a lane change, you are not yanking the wheel, you are doing a slow, controlled lean. What you are doing physically is transferring the weight of the 2-ton vehicle off the left side of the car and loading it onto the right side wheels. Centrifugal force from the gentle turn pushes the body of the car outward, putting more vertical load on the right side bearings. Now you listen. If the humming noise suddenly gets significantly louder during that gentle left lean, congratulations, you have just diagnosed a bad right side wheel bearing in about 10 seconds. Then you ease the wheel back to straight, let the car stabilize, and gently lean to the right. This unloads the right side and loads the left side. If the noise vanishes or gets quieter, you have just confirmed it. The transmission is mathematically not the problem. A transmission failure would not change with steering input because the transmission sits on the center line of the chassis and is not affected by lateral weight transfer. Only a wheel bearing, which is bolted directly to a load-bearing wheel, will respond to weight shift like that. Once you know which side, you can take it to any honest independent mechanic and ask for a single hub assembly replacement on that specific corner. As for the actual swap, it is conceptually straightforward. Wheel comes off, brake caliper comes off, rotor comes off, 3 or 4 bolts, hold the hub to the steering knuckle, unbolt them, the old hub slides out, the new one slides in, torque to spec, reassemble. An experienced mechanic does it in under an hour, done. Listen to me very carefully on this final part because I am not playing around. The Swerve Test is a real diagnostic tool that real mechanics use, but it is only safe when performed on a completely empty road with no other vehicles around you. Do not try this on a busy highway. Do not try this in the rain. Do not try this if you have not driven the car at speed in a long time. And do not, under any circumstance, ignore a wheel bearing noise for months on end thinking you are saving money, because a wheel bearing that fully fails can seize the wheel, lock up the rotor, or in the absolute worst case, allow the wheel to physically separate from the car at speed. That is a real failure mode, and it kills people every year. Get it diagnosed, get it fixed. Just do not let them sell you a $3,000 transmission for a $40 problem. If this video saved you a single dollar, hit the like button, drop your dealership horror story in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so the next person searching for help in 2026 can find this before they get robbed. Drive safe.